All right, I believe we are live. Anyone watching, feel free to chime in if we're having any audio visual issues.
I can't hear you.
We are now live. Like I said, anyone who is watching, please chime in if we are having any audio or visual issues. We're really excited for today's webinar.
Live.
Today we have Melinda Carrera joining us. And we're really excited to talk a little bit about what happens to your credit score if you don't manage your debt wisely. Melinda is the owner of Credit Street Financial. Melinda, do you want to take a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do with Credit Street Financial?
Yes. So my business is Credit Street Financial. All of my social media tags are Mel Money Gal. So it's all one person. There's so many fake accounts out there. So just be aware. I do more so credit education. I do credit repair as well, as far as putting into disputes with you. So we work together to dispute items that are hurting your credit, that are preventing you from getting your house, your car, credit cards, whatever it is that you're trying to obtain and use your credit for. We look at your credit report and see what it is that's blocking you from getting that. A lot of times it's stuff that people don't really understand, because it could be a mixture of things. It could be one little thing. It could be something that's really simple, because this is not something that unfortunately is not taught everywhere. So that's where I come in, and I more so do credit education. I don't like to do credit repair where I'm fixing things for you. I like to do it with you so you can see the results and you know what it is. Like, you're also learning as well.
Awesome. So you're more a credit education service more so than credit repair.
Correct. Yes. I work with you during the process.
Perfect. And correct me if I'm wrong, Melinda, but I believe you have like firsthand experience in credit repair. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So my credit at one point was terrible. I had an eviction, I had a repossession, I had late payments, and now my credit is 811 as of yesterday on just TransUnion. I haven't checked my Experian or my Equifax, but I know what it's like to have bad credit, and I do know that it's not something that is an end all. A lot of people think that it takes 7 or 8 years to fix it, and that is not the case. There is so many things that you can do now to prevent your credit from getting even further in the hole. So don't think that it's going to take 7 years, because that's what I was told, that it's going to take years and years and years. But I'm telling you, it's not true.
Well, that's like really, really hopeful to hear right off the bat. I think with that, we can jump into some questions. And for anybody watching, if you have any questions specifically about credit or debt, if you're being sued for debt, please go ahead and drop those questions in the chat and we'll get around to them here in a minute. But to start off, I had some questions personally for you, Melinda. I was wondering if you could tell us what types of debt have the biggest impact on your credit score.
I would say repossessions. They definitely have the biggest impact. Evictions are a little bit harder to come off. Bankruptcies weigh a lot on your credit report, but they're not necessarily the hardest thing to come off, but they weigh a lot as far as how many points it's measured. All of it really impacts you. I would say late payments, because that is the biggest factor. Credit is measured in 5 metrics, and late payments being the largest one, which is 35% of your credit score. So payment history has the hugest impact on your credit report. And by having so many late payments, that's when those accounts can close. And then if they close and you have balances, you can be sued. And then that's where solo suit comes in.
Yes, that's true. If you've been sued, solo suit can help. We can help you file an answer to your lawsuit. We can also help you take it a step further and settle the debt. I wanted to kind of push a little further on that question though, Melinda, and ask, so you talked about how late payments make up 35% of your credit score. So are there certain types of late payments that will like affect your score worse? You said repossessions have a big hit, but like, what about credit card debt? Do you know if like one has more weight than the other on your credit score?
It all depends on the age of the card. So if it's something that is like a $40,000 card that you've had for 20 years, then that card is, if you have a late on that card in comparison to like a $1,000 card that you've had for 3 months, that $40,000 card that you've had for 20 plus years is going to hurt you having a late on that account more than your recent account for $1,000 that you have for 3 months. So because that account helps you more, the one for that's a 20-year-old account, it's going to have a bigger impact on you. So it weighs more on your credit. And then also, I would say any type of loan. So if you have an auto loan, personal loan, student loans, having late payments on any type of loan will hurt. They all hurt. Honestly, they all hurt. But I would say, just based off of experience, I would say loans have been hurting a lot more than credit cards or credit lines.
Interesting. Okay. Well, my other question for you was, if you do get behind on a debt payment, because we're talking about the huge impact that late payments have on your score. So if you have some sort of a delinquent debt mark on your credit score, or if you have, a charge off on your credit score, do you know how long it takes for the credit score to improve after you've paid off those types of debts? So like if you have a charge off and you pay it off, like you get contacted by a collection agency and then you pay them and you pay the debt off, how long does it typically take for your credit score to go back up?
So let's say you have an open and active account. You happen to have a 30-day late on it and the account is still open and active. It will take 24 on-time payments to get rid of the damage of one single late payment. Now, if the account is closed and it's charged off and you have those late payments and you don't really care about having that account anymore because it's charged off, well, that's when you're going to want to settle it and pay that item off with whoever owns that account, because it could be sold to an agency or it could still be with the original lender. And if it's still with the original lender, you're going to want to ask them if you can please delete this off my credit report and I will settle this they'll probably offer you like at 80%. You can negotiate with them. But if they're willing to delete it from your credit report, they probably won't negotiate much lower than 70%. But there are times where people have told me that they got it down to 50%. So it just all depends on your conversation and who you're speaking to, because some managers have more ability to do things. It just all depends who you're speaking to. But I would suggest that if it is something that is charged off, you definitely want to call and make some sort of arrangement to get that off of your credit report, because that can bring your score up anywhere from automatically 10 to 50 points, depending on the debt.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying if you do have a charged off account on your credit score or a delinquent debt, if you call the creditor or the debt collector and you negotiate some sort of a payoff, even if it's a settlement, you pay like a portion of the original amount. And as a part of that agreement, you ask them to remove it from your credit score. Doing so can improve the credit score by 15 or so points.
Correct. Depends on the debt. It all depends. If it's a large debt, then obviously it's going to be more points. If it's a smaller debt, it's going to be probably a few points. The best way is to have it deleted from your credit report. Otherwise, it's really not going to help you much if it's still on your credit report, whether there's a balance or no balance.
Gotcha. And what about a judgment? If you've been sued for debt and you lost the case, or maybe you didn't respond in time and so you lost by default judgment, do you know what kind of an effect having a judgment on your account would have?
I would say those are the worst, because they can come after your wages. And so once they're coming after your wages, then, I mean, there's kind of no preventing that. You can't go against the government. So you want to respond to your debt summons. You never, ever, if you have a judgment, if you're being sued, any type of paperwork that is coming your way saying that they are going to sue you, respond to that. Never let those go. Never, ever let those go.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. And, just to clarify for anyone watching, so if you have been sued and you don't respond before your state's deadline, the court well, the debt collector who's suing you, or if it's a creditor, they can file what's called a motion for default judgment. If the court grants the motion for default judgment, then that's kind of like saying you lost your case. Even if you didn't get a chance to respond and defend yourself, like that judgment, it essentially says that you've lost. Now, there are ways to reverse a judgment like that, but it's a lot more difficult to reverse it than it is to prevent it. So, that's why at Solo Suit, we always like to make sure people know that it's best to file an answer to block a default judgment. Even if your ultimate goal is to settle the debt, it's best to just file an answer to make sure you don't lose automatically. Because as Melinda was saying, if you do lose by default judgment or any type of judgment, the creditor or debt collector would then have the legal right to take other action to get the money back. So they can garnish your wages, they can put liens on your property, they can freeze your bank accounts, and they can take other action to get their money back. So it's best to try to avoid the judgment. Melinda, do you have any idea like how many points a judgment could affect your credit score?
It's like having a bankruptcy. So it can, I would say, anywhere from like 70 to 120 points. I don't think less than 70 points.
Okay, so 70 bare minimum, up to 120 even.
Maybe 150 even.
Yeah, so it could have a very substantial effect on your score. Now, if you are to settle the debt instead of just take the judgment, that will still have an impact on your credit score, but I don't think it would have as strong of an impact, right?
Correct. And they're not going to garnish your wages.
Yes, so you're not dealing with the wage garnishment. You get a less of an impact on your credit score. Overall, I think debt settlement can be just like a better option in general. I'm going to drop a link in the chat for anyone watching where you can go and file an answer into your lawsuit to prevent that default judgment. So I'm just sending that in right now.
Sent you over the Solo Suit link. I don't know if you saw it.
Yes, I sent that one over. So yeah, if you guys want to respond to your lawsuit, be sure to follow this link. And then on top of that, if you're interested in taking it a step further and negotiating debt settlement, here's a link where you can get that process started through our service called Solo Settle. Let's see. Yeah. All right. Well, with that all being said, just wanted to take some time now to answer some questions that I see we're getting on the chat. Thank you guys so much for asking questions. That's what this whole webinar really is about. So if anyone else out there is watching, drop your questions in the chat right now. We're going to move on to answer some of these. First of all, we've got from Shirley a question. It says, we are trying to buy a home. We were told that we need to get old late payment history removed from our credit report according to mortgage brokers. How can we get those removed after we have already established good payment habits?
If it's been more than 2 years, well, I need to know if it's been less than 2 years. So if the late payments are less than 2 years old, then you definitely want to contact that creditor and just let them know. A lot of times, just being upfront about your situation and making arrangements ahead of time can save you so much of a hassle. Like, if you know you're going to be late, you can actually even call the creditor and let them know, hey, I'm going to be late. So that way they don't mark your credit. They don't want to mark you 30 days late. Now, for you, since you are buying a home and you are interested in removing late payments, which I'm assuming are less than 2 years old, because anything that's over 2 years old doesn't necessarily have that much of an impact on you anymore, you're going to want to contact that creditor. If for whatever reason that creditor is not able to help you, you are going to have to put in a dispute. So you will have to, if you want, you can visit my website. I have a late payment letter there, or you can just do one on ChatGPT. Put on there, hey, I need a letter to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. I have these late that need to come off of my credit report. Explain the situation, and ChatGPT will give you a letter with the actual addresses. But just double check those addresses if you decide to use ChatGPT.
Okay, yeah, and Melinda, while you were responding, I just wanted to let you know that Shirley hopped on the chat and said that the debts, I believe, are less than 2 years old. So do you have anything to add?
Yes, I figured they were less than 2 years old. Anything older than 2 years doesn't have an impact on you anymore, or they're not allowed to use that in any credit decision. Since they are less than 2 years old, they do still have an impact. Just to be transparent, like if your late payment is something that is less than 3 months old, it's a lot easier to get off than something that is more than 3 months old. So the sooner if your late payment is recent, it's just so much easier. I would suggest getting on the phone ASAP if it is more than 3 months old, and getting on top of that, because it does take 35 days to get a response back for each time. So if you're doing something that needs to meet a deadline, just keep in mind it takes 30 days every time to update.
Got it. And 30 days for the credit score to update. Is that what you're saying?
For them to respond. So they're either going to update it or they're not. And if they don't update it, then you'll have to do the next thing, which will be give them a call or send them another letter. Like, you have to keep reaching out to them until they fix it. And so if you reach out to them, and you have to do it to all three. So not just Experian, not just Equifax, not just TransUnion, you have to do it to all three. If the late payment is reported on all three bureaus, then you have to contact all three of them or write the letter to all three. But I would suggest contacting the lender first, because if they are able to correct that late payment, that's always best case scenario.
Awesome. So if you're in this position, contact the creditor, and then make sure that you contact the credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, to make sure that you can get it removed. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
What kind of things would you say to the collector, or not the collector, excuse me, the lender or the creditor, who I guess is in charge of the, negative mark on your report? What kind of things would you say to them to get them to remove it?
I would just be upfront. I would tell them, hey, I'm in the position right now to get a house, and my lender is telling me whatever the lender is telling you, and it's something that I really need. And you can go back and say, the reason why I was late was because, typically the best reason is just say, like, I didn't have the money, I was going through a hard time, which most times is the truth. So if you tell them that you were having some sort of hardship during that time, then they will work with you. And if for whatever reason they're not able to work with you, then the next step is to go to the credit bureaus. But it always go through the lender or creditor first.
Got it. Yeah, and in my experience, working with debt collectors and communicating with consumers who are being contacted or sued by debt collectors, I think most times creditors are willing to work with you if you have some sort of unexpected life circumstance that made it hard for you to pay off your debt. They will work with you to either renegotiate the contract and, maybe set up a new payment plan, or if it's already been charged off and you're just trying to negotiate a settlement, like they'll work with you. They want to get their money back. And if it takes a settlement to do that, I think oftentimes they're willing to do that. So
yeah, creditors definitely do work with you. I think a lot of people just have this impression that they're not going to work with you, but they really do want to work with you.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, next question. This one's from Nicole Loves Pandas. They say, hi, I have a few collections I'm not being sued for on my report. I want them to be removed as quickly as possible. My question is, if I call to negotiate, how do I not restart the statute of limitations?
So if you call to negotiate, they will not start it over. You'll just have to, I would suggest disputing them, especially if they've been sold. So you didn't originally make an agreement with that creditor. Let's say you had an account with Bank of America, they sold it to LVN Funding. Now, when you first opened up that account, it was with Bank of America. If you go into the law, technically that shouldn't be on your credit, but you got to get on that ASAP and put in your disputes. So if you put in your disputes, I would say especially if it's a collection, depending on the balance, if it's a smaller balance, then 9 times out of 10 that will be removed. Now, if you do that, just keep in mind you are waiting, and the more you wait, the higher you're putting yourself at risk to be sued. So that is a gamble as well. So I would suggest calling them and letting them know that you want it off your credit report and you're willing to pay X amount. You can always negotiate too. See what they're willing to offer you and then negotiate with them.
Yeah, and I have a couple comments on this question too. For anyone watching, just so you know, the statute of limitations is kind of like the deadline that creditors and debt collectors have to sue people over debt. And it varies by state. So, for example, let's say if you're being sued for credit card debt in California, I believe the statute of limitations is 4 years. So that means that most creditors and debt collectors only have 4 years to sue you, and it usually is starting from the date of your last payment on the account. Sometimes if you make a payment or if you call and admit that you owe the debt and acknowledge it and maybe get into some sort of process to settle it, it can restart the statute of limitations. So if the debt is already past the statute of limitations, you should understand that they could still sue you for the debt. And if that does happen, make sure that you respond and bring up the expired statute of limitations in your answer document. Solo Suit can actually help you do that. I'll drop a link right now again for you to create your answer document if you're being sued. I just dropped that in the chat. But yeah, just to reiterate, if the debt is already past the statute of limitations, that means that the creditor and debt collector does not have any grounds to sue you. They might still file a lawsuit, and so you have to make sure you file your answer to defend yourself and bring up the expired statute to the court. And if you do, in most cases, the lawsuit will be dismissed. I also want to just emphasize that, this webinar is informational, it's educational. We are not attorneys. We do not represent you in your case. So just a disclaimer there. We cannot give you legal advice because we do not represent you in the case. So just make sure that you don't interpret this as advice for your specific case, but it's general information. So yeah, hopefully that kind of helps with your question. Nicole loves pandas. Let's move on then. We've got a question from Vince Fiscal Focus. He says, how can someone's credit repair company partner with you, Solo Suit? If you're interested in partnering with Solo Suit, you can send us an email at support@solosuit.com.
Highly recommend.
Thank you, Melinda. Yeah, we would love to partner with you and just help get more information out there about how to fix your credit, repair your credit, and deal with debt problems and resolve your debts. But yeah, just shoot us an email, support@solosuit.com, and just make sure it's clear what your intentions are, and it should get passed on to the right person. We've got another question from Brandon. He says, I have a default judgment. How can I reverse it? So if you lost the opportunity, well, Melinda, you may want to answer this one, but I think it's maybe more on the legal side, so I can also answer it.
You were doing good, so
okay.
Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, so if you have been sued and you lost your opportunity to respond to the lawsuit and a default judgment has been entered into your case, you can still try to reverse that judgment by filing what's called a motion to set aside judgment. In some cases, or in some states, it's called a motion to vacate judgment. And I am just pulling up a blog resource on Solo Suit's website all about how to file a motion to set aside judgment. Hopefully this will help you with your question, Brandon. But typically it's just a request to the court asking them to reverse the judgment and give you another opportunity to file an answer, defend yourself in the case, and resolve the debt either outside of court or just get the case dismissed in general if it's like a fraudulent debt. So yes, a motion to set aside judgment or a motion to vacate judgment is a good way to reverse a default judgment. Next question is from Perry AP. He says, how long does it take to remove repossession from a credit report that was settled for less?
It all depends on who the lender is. It's different for everybody. It can be 3 months. It could be 3 years. So there's really no set answer there's really no set answer on that. Okay. Unless you pay per delete with them. So you can contact that lender or creditor and tell them, hey, this is still showing up on my credit. What can I do to get this off my credit?
Okay, so you can do a pay for delete, and that would mean you maybe pay a portion of the debt or the debt in full to get them to remove it.
Like you paid it though, so you can contact them since you already paid. It sounds like he already paid it. So if you already paid it, contact them and say, hey, this is still showing up on my credit. I already paid it. What can I do to get this off my credit report? And then if for whatever reason they're not able to do it, then you'll want to contact the credit bureaus and let them know, hey, I already paid this. Is there any way that you can have this removed? You'll have to obviously type up a letter.
Got it. Yeah, that's really useful information to have. Because sometimes, and according to my understanding, Melinda, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in some cases, if you've settled a debt, that settlement may remain on your credit report for up to like 7 years. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, so it is going to remain. If you don't do anything at all, like try to fight it to come off, then it will remain for 7 years. Now, if you try to fight it, within, fighting it meaning contacting the lender, contacting the creditor, contacting the bureaus, then you have a higher chance of it coming off sooner. But nothing will come off if you don't do anything at all.
Yeah. I want to just emphasize, like, taking action is the best thing that you can do. Call the creditor, call the credit bureaus, do something, because if you just push it off, you'll probably be in a worse position down the road. So just try to address things early. And you'll have a better chance at improving your credit score, but also resolving any pending debts. We got another question from TH. It says, I'm in New York now 3 years. When I got sued, it was 7. I still get letters for a dispute now over 10 years from some company in Connecticut. Not sure what you're asking there, TH. But if you...
I would contact that company.
Yeah, contact the company, see why they're still reporting you to the credit bureaus. And if you want to clarify your question, we have like a couple more minutes and I'll see if I can get to it. I got another question from Trisha Brown, though. It says, is 7 years from the date you... Wait, let's see. Sorry, technical difficulties. They said, is it 7 years from the date that you settled? So I think we're going back to that question about how long does a debt settlement remain on your credit report. They're asking, is it 7 years from the date of the settlement? Do you know, Melinda?
Last activity. So whenever that account had its last activity, whether it's last call, last payment, whatever it is, last activity.
Okay. So it's from the date of whatever the last action was taken on the account. That's good.
And it will tell you on the credit report too. It will tell you last activity, or if you use Identity IQ, I have that in my link. It's a really good credit monitoring service, and it tells you the last activity of all the collections. So it will be 7 years from that date.
So it could be safe to say, I think, that if you've settled the debt, then the 7 years usually starts from the date that you paid the settlement.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions that we have for today. So we're going to go ahead and end. But before we do, I just wanted to, again, send you guys the link for how to respond to a debt lawsuit if you've been sued. You can draft and file an answer with SoloSuit. Our software can help you draft your response, which will be customized to your case. You will respond to a series of questions about your lawsuit. And then, like I said, our software generates an automatic personalized response for you. And then we can also help you file it in any state. So go ahead and check that out. I sent the link below. And if you're interested in trying to settle your debt, we have a product called Solo Settle. I'm adding a link to that here. Solo Settle is a tech-driven approach to settlement. So if you want to settle your debt, you can use Solo Settle to send and receive offers to your creditor or the debt collector, and you can negotiate with them all digitally so that you don't actually have to call someone and negotiate over the phone, which can be really intimidating for some people. So go ahead and check that out. And go on over to solosuit.com if you have any other questions about your debt situation or your credit situation. We have a blog on there with lots of resources, educational resources to help answer these types of questions. And we also have a weekly webinar every Wednesday, so feel free to join us next week as we host another webinar. Melinda, thanks so much. Do you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, thank you guys so much. Actually, I do take action. yes, from the takeaway that I get from this, definitely take action with your credit. That way you are ahead of it and you don't have to worry about all of this. You don't have to even use solo suit.
Yes, totally. I agree. Try to take action before, but hopefully you're not our next customer at Solo Suit. But if you are, just know Solo Suit's rooting for you. We want to help you defend yourself in those cases. But more importantly, we want to help you settle your debt and resolve it so that you can get a new start. So, yeah.
Right.
Thanks so much, Melinda. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a wonderful Wednesday.
Bye.